Mr. Bison flips!
Mr. Bison flips! Mr. Bison flips! Mr. Bison flips!
This is part 2 of the exploration of Measure for Measure Act 2, Scene 2.
Angela then comes back and talks about the law itself a bit more, and this sort of harkens back to Act 1, where Aeschylus described the law as being a lion, sleepy lion in its den that's being overgrown by moss, and then we had in Act 2, Scene 1, the law was talked about as a scarecrow, and we mustn't let it be a scarecrow that the birds just sit upon, but rather we must make the people frightened of the law. And here he's saying, the law hath not been dead, though it hath slept, and those many had not dared to do that evil if the first that did it had answered for his deed. Right. So if we'd killed someone off early on, that would have deterred anyone else to follow suit, and instead people would have obeyed the new law or the old law. Now it is awake. Right. So the personified law is now coming to life. Take note of what is done, and like a prophet, looks in a glass that shows what future evils, either new or by remissness, new conceived, and so in progress to be hatched and born, are now to have no successive degrees, but ere they live to end. So that extended simile of the prophet continues to personify the new law, or the newly awoken law. Isabella then continues to ask for pity, and Angela saying, I show most pity when I show justice. So he's trying to be fair to everyone by being cruel, essentially. And so Isabella then moves on to another angle. It is excellent to have a giant's strength, but it is tyrannous to use it like a giant. Right? It's great to be strong and imposing, but if you misuse and abuse that power and that strength, then you're in trouble. And Lucy again is impressed by the way that she puts that idea forward. And then she carries the idea forward further through comparison to Jove or Jupiter, or Zeus, if you speak Greek mythology, and how they could, if all men could thunder the way that Jove does, then Jove will never be quiet. And that's because every petty officer would use his heaven for thunder, right? So we would hear, if everyone had the power to use thunder, then everyone would be using thunder all the time. So it would be an excessive misuse of that divine power that Zeus or Jove has. Isabella continues to praise Jove, but through him also praising her Christian God, that he's selective and discerning in the way that he punishes. And that sharp and sulphurous bolt splits the unwedgeable gnarled oak rather than the soft myrtle. But man, on the other hand, doesn't really do that at all. Proud man, dressed in a little brief authority, most ignorant of what he's most assured. His glassy essence, or his own reflection in the glass in the mirror, is like an angry ape. Place such fantastic tricks before our heaven as make the angels weep. So the way we abuse our power is an affront and an insult to the gods and the way that they use their power. And both of the men on the sidelines are now getting quite excited about this. We can see Lucio's excitement in his shorter phrases now. Oh, to him, wench, he will relent, he's coming. I perceive it. Excuse me. At the same time, the provost is saying, pray heaven she win him. And Isabella concludes that point by admitting that we can't hold everyone to the same high standard. We cannot weigh our brother with ourselves. So if we turn the page, Angela is still quite perplexed as to why Isabella is actually doing this. She's saying, why do you put these sayings to me? Because authority, though it err like others, hath yet a kind of medicine in itself. What skins the vice at the top. So she pleads for him to go to your bosom, knock there, and ask your heart what it doth know, that like my brother's fault, if it confesses a natural guiltiness such as his, let it not sound a thought upon your tongue against my brother's life. Right. So again, similar to the idea before about, letting he who is without sin throw the first stone. So really, if you can, there's no natural guiltness in you, then sure, go ahead and judge my brother. But if you find any, and we use this metaphor to explore this, when you knock on your heart and no sin ever opens that door, then fair enough. But if you have any sin in your heart, then don't judge my brother for being a sinner. And Angelo is seeing that, now he's also starting to agree with her in his aside, saying that she speaks, and 'tis such sense that my sense breeds with it. So I'm starting to agree with her, but obviously I can't say that. Instead, he says, fare you well, and tries to walk away. But Isabella is persisting in trying to get him to come back. And listen to how I will bribe you, my lord. Turn back. And Angelo is absolutely horrified. How, bribe me? Because now this virtuous lady is suddenly turning to crime herself or to sin. I, with such gift that heaven shall share with you. Yes, I will bribe you, but not with fond shekels of the detested gold, or stones, rare stones, and from the rich, but with true prayers. So eternal help through prayer is what she offers. And Angelo semi-relenting that he's still leaving her, but come to me tomorrow so we can talk more about this. Lucio sees that this is probably the best they will get from Angelo in his current state, so he urges her to relent and go home for tonight. Go to, 'tis well, away. And then she concludes with that statement about the honor again. Heaven keep your honor safe. And Angelo straight away sees that is a connection to him. For I am that way going to temptation where prayers cross. So he feels that he's in a state of there's a conflict in his heart. So we then conclude the scene once again after establishing what time they will meet. Isabella departs with the word, save your honor. And that's where Angelo takes up his soliloquy. Because obviously as Isabella leaves with Lucio and the provost, he's now on his own, so he can deliver a soliloquy and he can be completely honest with us, the audience, and with himself. And he starts his soliloquy by responding to exactly what she says. Save your honor, yes, from thee, even from thy virtue. What's this? Is it her fault or mine, the tempter, or the tempted? Who sins most? So he's seeing her as a temptress and himself as a tempted person. So he's really attracted to her from the argument that she's presented before him. But he realizes straight away that obviously she's not to blame. Ha! Broken meter, exclamation, both to show that clearly he sees who's in the wrong here. Not she, nor does she tempt. She's not doing this intentionally, but it is I that, lying by the violet in the sun, do as the carrion does, not as the flower. So if you picture a person lying in the sun next to a flower, he could either, like the flower, bloom and look beautiful and graceful and soak up the sunlight, or you can let the sun rot your body the way that the carrion does. And obviously he's going that way, so he corrupts her rather than bloom and flourish from her. Can it be that modesty may more betray our sense than woman's lightness? So is it more seductive for a woman to be modest and honourable than it is for them to be flirtatious and openly seductive? Having waste ground enough, shall we desire to raise the sanctuary and pitch our evils there? So essentially, should we knock down the monastery, which is the sanctuary she resides in, and instead build a temple for filth in that place? And then obviously he's disgusted by that idea himself. Oh, fie! What dost thou? Art what thou art, or what art thou, Angelo? So he's really starting to question himself and his own morality here. What dost thou, or what art thou, Angelo? Dost thou desire her foully for those things that make her good? So you, again, corrupting her goodness, which is quite ironic. And he for a temporary moment he does change his mind. He's saying, "Oh, let her brother live," because he can see that this would result in spending more time with Isabella, possibly. He then goes on to echo his own comment about the jury before and how the jury might have corrupted individuals on it or thieves on it. But here he's talking about thieves for their robbery have authority when judges steal themselves. So if the judge is immoral, then obviously why is there immorality in what the thief is doing? So in this case, how can I judge Claudio for having impure thoughts when I'm having impure thoughts about his sister when she comes to ask for his life? And he's quite surprised. There's an honest surprise in here. What? Do I love her, that I desire her to speak again and feast upon her eye? What is it I dream on? O cunning enemy, so he's now talking to Satan, the tempter, that to catch a saint with saint doth bait thy hook. So we're using a fishing metaphor here, but he's also obviously elevating himself to saintly standard. Not only is he complimenting her, but also putting himself as an equal of saints. So I guess there's some link between this and what Aeschylus said before about how one might fall by virtue or rise through sin. There's an element of connection between the two, I think. Most dangerous is that temptation that doth goad us on to sin in loving virtue, right? Connects those two again. He then concludes by saying how he has never been affected by female seduction before, and that's why he's so surprised by it now. Never could the strumpet with all her double vigour, art and nature once stir my temper, but this virtue is made, subdues me quite. Even till now, when men were fond, I smiled and wondered how. So this is a complete new revelation for him. So this couplet kind of shows that revelation for him, that he's realizing something now that he hasn't known before in life, that how men could be seduced by all these flirtatious women, because suddenly he's seeing that idea as well of being taken in by the charms of a woman. And that exit takes us to the end of what is a fairly important scene in the play, in that it does unpack a lot of the big issues and the conflict between right and wrong and morality, and the way that justice has to be enforced in the play. So hopefully this has clarified some of those aspects for you. If not, then obviously bring your notes to class and we will chat about them there.